Our keynote speaker today has come from Washington, D.C. to kick off our program. Dr. Hanna is the Executive Director of the National Center for Creative Aging. We're grateful she's agreed to join us today, and her topic today, as I mentioned, is creative expression, health, and well-being in advancing age. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Hanna.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, John, and thank you all. Good morning. It's wonderful to be here in St. Louis. I must say, I brought my snow boots, my fur hat, 2 coats. When I met John and Tom, I thought I was in Florida. So thank you for this warm, very warm welcome here. Well, if it's okay with you, I'm going to move down to the floor level so I can show you an array of slides. My presentation today will focus on how older artists are role models for healthy aging and how everybody can master the art of aging. So, and throughout, please let me know if you can't hear me or you want to ask a question. I'm looking forward to a conversation. And one of the reasons that I jumped at the chance and am honored to be here speaking with you today is because there's so much happening in St. Louis around creativity and aging, and the partnerships and the truly the welcome, the exemplary programs. We think St. Louis is truly a stellar leading place and look forward to working with you in the years to come. And I'll tell you about ways that we can work together as this presentation goes along. But I came here 2 years ago actually to speak as part of a symposium on this topic. And I had always wanted to go to St. Louis. My background is sculpture. So I wanted to see the arch, of course. And the other thing I wanted to see is I'm a fountain maker. So I wanted to see the Carl Millis fountains. Now someone told me, maybe in jest, that you could walk from Washington University to see the fountains at the train station. So I did. And I must say, it was a beautiful walk. And I was thrilled to round the corner, see the fountains, and we'll start with Carl Millis, because do you know he made these fountains when he was 65? And they were first called the Wedding of the Waters. But your fathers of the city and mothers thought that was a little risque. And so they changed it to the Meeting of the Waters. And it's one of his best works in the country. And Carl Millis did live to be 80 years old. But let's see, I've got many things to keep track of here. He really didn't intend to be a sculptor. So that's one thing. People that are artists really are open to change. He wanted to go to South America to work, but he stopped in Paris and he bumped into the artist that made the sculpture you see on your right, Rodin. How many of you are familiar with Rodin? Yes, we love his work. He's the father of modern sculpture. So Carl Millis dropped all his plans and worked with Rodin, and the rest, as they say, is history. And here you see the thinker, and it's a good sculpture to really talk just briefly about the National Center for Creative Aging, because we're about thinking in new ways about aging. Thinking about aging in terms of assets rather than deficits or lost. So we build our work around, there are usually 4 S's that we talk about. There are those that are commonly the common paradigm about aging, which is about symptoms and signs. In fact, some people later in life lose their whole personality to this and are just referred to in healthcare as one of the big diseases that they have. There goes stroke, or there goes the person with dementia. What we want to keep focused on is the person. So we're looking at where are strengths and where are satisfactions. We are 10 years old, based in Washington, D.C. We're affiliated with George Washington University, and we provide education, encourage research, promote policy, and give technical assistance. Two more older artists, and John just mentioned that we're going to hear about Louise Nevelson. Well, she too had trouble when she started her career because she was a great innovator and change maker, but then became widely accepted. She lived to be 89, and you'll get to meet her actually in a virtual person. And next, John Chamberlain. And John just died a few weeks ago at 84. And if you notice something different about these artists, they changed their practice according to the times. You don't see marble or bronze. In fact, you'll hear how Ms. Nevelson talks about there wasn't such a thing in World War II, so she just started picking up pieces of wood and making sculpture. And John Chamberlain started just picking up beat up parts of cars and made sculpture. Very expressive and fresh. So there has been a study done by the Research Center on Arts and Culture. And this center is now part of the National Center for Creative Aging. Joan Jeffrey, who has worked her whole career looking at artists, now is looking specifically at older artists. So this is a brief set of slides that will show you who specifically is the New York artist. And this is not the big names. This is the ones that work their whole life in the boroughs of New York, but could be right here in St. Louis. We think all these traits are transferable. Well, how did it get the title? Well, Joan says she sat in front of a 97-year-old artist and said, "How are you today?" And the artist said, "Above ground." Well, now that is certainly an asset-driven, motivated. We're positive. We are above ground and celebrating it. And again, this was made possible by some generous contributions. We're finding that more funding is truly flowing to this area. So in tough times, it's good to remember that there are resources out there, and we hope at the center we can be a resource to you in finding them. Okay, well, why are artists models for society? I think we just touched upon certain things, that in our age, the old paradigms of work are changing, of how we live now with so many extra years, it's changing, how we don't have a company or a corporation or government that really stays with us all our life. We'll be freelancers. Well, artists have always been freelancers. Now, artists are tenacious about their identity. And one thing that happens sometimes when you age, especially if you leave your jobs, what you're used to doing, often there's trouble finding who you are, what's your identity, and having meaning and purpose in life. So again, we see that the artists are able to feel validated as artists. They're for people. They have high self-esteem. And they would choose to be artists again. And we'll see there are hardships with this life choice. Art is the only thing that I've left in the world. This comes from a homeless artist, that even homeless holds on to making their art. And again, we find through arts and education that the arts are certainly important in and of themselves. They're intrinsically important. They're part of our very being. But they also help us resolve problems, conflicts. My background is sculpture. I feel like working at the center, National Center for Creative Aging. It's one of my most ambitious sculpture projects because I'm constantly piecing things and trying to make connections and truly trying to create something beautiful and long-lasting and a contribution to society. Art is what makes me live. Oh, who did Joan study? Actually, she studied 213 aging visual artists, but she wanted to really study those that had been making art all their life and that they had to be living in New York and that she could talk to them in person, and she did it in English, Spanish, and Chinese. Now, by the way, I do have copies of the study. We have them hard copy and online. And how she did, because the New York Times did write about this study. They proclaimed older artists as role models for healthy aging. She did an interesting method. I know we have some researchers here and faculty members, and she worked with Cornell. And they actually found the artist through respondent-driven sampling. So she found a core group of artists. She gave them 5 coupons for $25. They gave it to their friends that met the criteria. Then Joan and her staff would interview them, give each one of them 5, and so it goes. So not only did she get her sampling, but she also learned how they communicate and who were their social networks. And that's another thing that we need to stress, is the arts build social network and social connection. Do you guys hear me okay? Is this all right? So, profile of the aging artist. Well, in her study, 73 years old, highly educated, has a retirement plan. Artists are innovative, of course, and creative, so it's amazing that they have beat the system in many ways. Now, I'll never retire. I'll retire when I'm in my coffin. And being from the art world, I know those of us that make art and love art feel the same way. I know I certainly do. Artists don't retire. And I think that's something in the next 25 years we're really going to see, is maybe even the word retirement will go away. I think we have so much more time. We have so much we can do. We are just volunteerism. I'm looking at Mary from the Community Council of Volunteers. Mary can put all of us to work, and the docent program, and other different kinds of work. I see people with their computers. Do you know there are 2 groups of people rapidly using technology? Now, all of us will say, yes, it's the young, but the other group is the older people. So don't count us out. I certainly need to take a course or 2, but yes. Okay, and what's more about? Well, they have that strong social network. They have their friends, their family. They communicate with other artists. They have common interest. Oh, artists, we do feel discriminated against. And of course, that's because we're out there, and sometimes we make really good things, and sometimes we don't. You'll hear about Louise Nevelson and what she did with some of her paintings one time. Goes to the studio every day, is driven and engaged with their art. May change medium. I'm a stone carver. I wish I had a picked watercolor. But I wish the stones were styrofoam. So indeed, I may switch to watercolor later on because my back is giving out. Has health insurance. So here you go, some stats. The artist, again, it could be back to the different education, but they found ways to have retirement. But look at this, in the city of New York, all this satisfaction is not coming from the great bucks that they earned, is it? And I think that's what we're finding in later life, that sometimes satisfaction is coming from being volunteers, not that artists are often considered volunteered and not considered for paying jobs. We'd like to change that, but at least what is taken in income is certainly offset by satisfaction. So medium income in New York City, that's tough. But not planning to leave New York City, there you go. And then again, it was shocking to learn no preparation for their art after death. So how do they do that? Well, their home is also their business. They live and work in the same place. Now, don't you think that's a current trend? What are we hearing about entrepreneurism? Older people starting new businesses right in their home? The city helps them out. In fact, New York is one of the 2 cities in the country that has the designation of age-friendly. New York and Portland, Oregon. I really don't know why St. Louis doesn't have that designation, and I'm sure you will. And they stay because they're peers. They don't want to leave. Now, the research showed this big gap. Artists have no preparation for their work after their death. Well, I can understand that. Art making is in the moment. And really, I think we all often think of art as what we see, a dance, a play, a piece of art. But what causes artists to be in love with their art is the making of it, the process of it. So of course, you know, we do not want our artwork to go to a junk heap, but we're going to keep making art rather than worrying about what happens afterwards. So a very well-known African-American male painter said, "After you dissect us, Joan, make sure you put us back together." And I do hope that you meet Joan Jeffrey. She's a marvelous speaker who did this study. So what came out of this study? The study produced some general recommendations and for policy implementation. And it really comes down to what we'll be talking about for the rest of the day. We've got to redefine work. We've got to redefine old age. We've got to be sure that there are informal social networks. We need flexible models. We need really good options for housing so that people aren't totally depressed or isolated when they have to change where they want to live. And that means often leaving behind their set of peers and their kind of work. Specifically, the recommendations come for artists, which again could apply to St. Louis. And if you do this for artists, you'll do it for everybody. That we need to create more work studio space. Everybody, the biggest problem you'll hear in aging services is better transportation. And specifically for artists, though, ways that the artwork can be archived. I want to go back a minute and talk about that, because what has happened, and I think good research does this. Let me give you some examples. I think I'm still on track with my good, because John and Tom saw my slides and know I'm from the South and can't talk fast. And they went, this is going to be the morning. So, please speed it up. But very graciously they said this, I might add. Although John did say he had a hook, which I don't see right now. But in any case, I digress. What has happened from this research study in New York is actually the New York Department for the Aging and the New York Division of Cultural Affairs have come together in a collaboration, much like I see here in St. Louis. And they have reinvented senior centers. So senior centers have more studio space in them for older artists and for older artists to exhibit their work. They also have found partners in the city, galleries that are saying, gosh, we didn't know these artists were around. We heard about them 20 or 30 years ago, but now we see they're still making art. Let's show their work. So more opportunities have been coming about to show work and also to work with children, intergenerational programs with schools, older artists going into schools. So even in these tight times when there hasn't been money, they have been sharing resources they each had to break down the silos. And Joan and her team, she was formerly at Columbia University, got together and said, this is a wonderful student project. Why don't we invent a cart that could go to the older artist studio, and we'll have a team of students from social work, occupational therapy, art education, art therapy, and arts administration to go and into the studio, work with the older artists, and from that team last year produced a course that was across disciplines with faculty volunteering. They found they didn't invent a new course number. They used whatever they had in their different departments. And they received contributions from the same people that funded this center to actually have laptops. And they interviewed 8 of those 142 artists and selected them and said, we are going to come to your studio, do this documentation with a software that's used by the Metropolitan Museum of Art to archive your work. But you're going to have either a family member or peer with you. So you both learn this together, because we're not going to do this year after year. We're going to do it one time. The old proverb, teach a person to fish. And it has worked remarkably well to the point that we will be doing this in Washington, D.C. next fall, and perhaps St. Louis in the future. I see the makings of that kind of interdisciplinary team right here. But it's been a marvelous benefit for the students involved, marvelous benefit for the older artists involved. So we're very grateful that this research can really impact education and training and practice and policy. But again, how does that really affect your and my life? Now, I don't know about you, but who isn't a fan of Michelangelo, a Renaissance artist? And in those days where life expectancy was certainly not, I'll have to flip my notes here because I don't want to give you the wrong date. But he lived to be 88. And in fact, he did this when he was this is the Sistine Chapel. I'm sure you all know this picture, the creation of Adam. And he signed it, Michelangelo, the sculptor. Talk about an attitude. Whenever the sculptures were made in the Renaissance, people would come up to him and take comments on the sculpture, and some weren't very nice. And Leonardo da Vinci was not very kind to him. In fact, he wasn't kind to the whole group of sculptors. He said sculpture was the lowest art form on the planet. It was dirty, messy. I once had a 5-year-old come into my studio, and she said, "You know, you really need to clean up." I was covered with dust from making the stone carving. And so we know we're messy, but that's part of our art form. But Michelangelo did the beautiful Sistine Chapel as a sculptor, but doing painting. And when he was in his late 80s, you know, he was the architect of the dome of St. Peter's, the Basilica in Rome. So talk about active aging. He was very engaged all along. So we know we can't be Michelangelo, but we do know that each of us can be creative and innovative. And Rollo May, do you know his work? Rollo May actually said creativity is bringing something new of value into the world. So it's of value. Sometimes it's big, like the Sistine Chapel, but sometimes it's what we call the little C of how you live every day, finding innovation, finding a new way to do a recipe, finding a new way to communicate with a friend, with your family, to go a new place you've never gone before. In fact, Gene Cohen, who called later life the creative age, actually said that this was our liberation age. And Erik Erikson, yes?
Can I ask you a question? How do you define the term professional artist? What is a professional artist?
Well, this is, again, it is what Joan Jeffrey defined it as, is a person that made art making their career lifelong. So instead of it like, I have a day job, I consider myself an artist, but I wouldn't qualify for her study because I work for the National Center for Creative Aging rather than in my studio as my profession. So does that help? So it's really that you spent your concentration of your working life doing that versus being a teacher or an administrator. So it's still a very small segment of our population, but it does give us some answers. Does that make sense? Any other questions at this time? And we're almost finished, so I look forward to actually answering and talking with you. I'll be here throughout the day, too. So if we all can be creative, then we really have mastered the arts of aging. Dr. Gene Cohen actually wanted to prove this even more definitely. And there's more research, in fact, coming about all the time. I know Laura Schmid is from Art Therapy. She'll talk to us soon. They're doing a lot of good research on this. But what Gene did was a 3-year study that measured the impact of community arts programming on the health of older people engaged. And I think this is a key word too, and we saw it with older artists, that the artists are engaged, they're not passive. We think it's wonderful to look at a play and see a play and look at artwork, but there's something really that happens in your whole body, and starting with your brain when you make art, because you are creating and you're problem solving. And contrary to popular belief, we do have new brain cells that grow when we stimulate our brains. It is the old hare and tortoise, that the hare is certainly the younger, quicker, but the tortoise has wisdom and is able to think. In fact, our brains after 45 start working in different ways. They work across hemispheres. So Gene's study found with a median age of 80 from his participants, control and experimental, the ones that were involved in the arts, even though the other group was involved in other activity, because it was so creative and engaging, they had at 80 better health, less doctor visits, less medication, increased activities. And Gene, this is a very small study though, but he extrapolated that the low cost of arts programs against the high cost of healthcare costs certainly could save funding. Well, at the National Center, we have been having a wonderful time in the last couple of years, especially looking for how we can put faces to this changing paradigm of positive aging. And so with our partners, Life's DHA, which is really a food enhancement that started actually in baby formula, for 2 years, we have done a competition. And I sure hope I see some of you in the competition next year. And we asked for people to submit a profile of a friend, or they could nominate themselves to be a beautiful mind. And this is ordinary people that have done extraordinary things by keeping creative. And it's not just in the arts. Creativity is across sectors. We do a lot of our work in the arts, but please don't think that you have to be an artist to master the art of aging or to be creative. And here are 3 of them. Of course, Ben has been playing his instrument all his life. Sue Kelly from Ohio is an avid swimmer, Olympic. And the couple, Alice and Richard, now their children are grown. They've changed the job they did all their lives, have a joint studio, and are living their life so fully. In fact, I'll read a quote by Sue. "I believe you do not grow old. You become old by not growing." So here we go, the big shift. It's really happening. I was thinking, what's happened since I've been here 2 years ago? Well, we have seen really growth, momentum here in St. Louis, momentum across the country where people aren't going to accept the old paradigms of aging, the silent majority drifting off into some retirement community. But we're going to stay active and engaged and have healthy and meaningful long lives. So just recently, the National Endowment for the Arts, and actually led by one of your St. Louis people, Rocco Landsman. Do you guys know Rocco? He's done some wonderful things at the NEA. In fact, he said, I'm like the cuckoo bird, and we all looked at him. What do you mean by that? He said the cuckoo bird goes around and lays eggs in other birds' nest. So he's been going to the Department of Defense and saying, you do art programs, let's get together and have joint projects. He went to the Housing and Urban Development. He said, you've got these wonderful places that could be art space. They're doing a project. And in March, he gathered up the gorilla of all agencies, Health and Human Services, and they held a summit. And we were honored at the National Center for Creative Aging. We were invited to put together this white paper, and it's hard copy and online. And if you're interested, go to arts.gov. And you can be part of a listserv, because what this means, bringing together the Health and Human Services, which includes the National Institutes of Health, Family Services, Administration on Aging, they're going to try to work across sectors to find ways to include the arts, so that we can really reap the benefits the arts give us. And we do expect, in fact, this title of this report is Framing a National Research Agenda, that there will be funding coming specifically for research in this area. So if you're a researcher, please stay tuned. And to that end, if you're a researcher, please apply for our Gene Cohen Research Award. Now, last but not least, and I'm almost on time, the National Center for Creative Aging, in fact, in a couple of weeks, will release a national initiative on creativity and aging in America. And it's funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and MetLife Foundation. And we're going to produce a leadership award for innovative programming. We are going to also produce a speakers or artist training bureau. I've already met several of you that should be in this bureau. We are also going to provide site grants, which we would really like to talk to St. Louis about, so we can create forums that share best practices and map the assets so we can put them in our national database, because the NEA too has funded NCCA to launch a national database. So if you're in St. Louis, and we certainly are going to look to John and his great network of providers, and would like to become engaged in the arts or know the kindred spirit that is investigating the arts in a certain way, we will do our best to connect you. So NCCA should be your home, a clearinghouse for this effort. And we're a small center, but an active center, and the only way we really get our work done is through people like you and places like St. Louis. So again, thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Our next presenter, as Director of Education and Training for the Starkloff Disability Institute, Colleen Kelly Starkloff, will be talking to us today about home and building design for successful aging. Please join me in welcoming Colleen Starkloff.
I'm Colleen Starkloff. I'm the co-director of the Starkloff Disability Institute. I came into that position when my husband, Max Starkloff, died a year ago. And I have to say, my husband was a tremendous model for aging. He became disabled in 1959 as a result of a car accident. He lived in a nursing home, which is where I met him after his injury. And after living at home for 4 years with going through a multitude of personal assistants, we don't call them caregivers in the world of disability because the word caregiver in our world connotes that somebody takes care of you. And our model is that you take care of yourself, and part of what you do in taking care of yourself is engage other people to assist you with the things that you can't do. So you make your own decisions and you control your own life. And I met my husband in a nursing home when I was the chief physical therapist. I was also the only physical therapist, so they called me the chief. I felt real good about that until I found out that I was chairing a department that had nobody else but me. So it's kind of humbling, really. And then I met Max, and I learned about living with significant disability and how frustrating, isolating, and limiting it is to have to live in an institution and to think about living in an institution for the rest of your life. He went there when he was 26. The average age of people living there was 80, and he felt if he didn't do something, he was going to die there. That was a profound learning experience for me because, first of all, I fell in love with him, and I didn't want to live in a nursing home. Secondly, I learned from him that the community, if you wanted to get out of a nursing home and live in a community, you had to have community amenities that would enable you to do so. And for purposes of this conversation this morning, I'll focus on housing. Okay, so why do I care about this? Well, as I said, I was trained as a physical therapist at St. Louis U, and I had that institutional experience myself. I saw people who wouldn't get up and move around, and you had to figure out how are you going to motivate them. Well, I'd do the song and dance in the PT department, and I'd say, come on, and I joked and played with them and everything. But I learned from these guys that if you don't have a reason to get up, you don't want to. You got to have a reason. You've got to be motivated. My little funny antics weren't funny enough. Although I will say, in an institution, people did like to come up off the floor and visit with me, because we did have fun up in PT. But it really wasn't a life. And a lot of people were frustrated there. And I told you about my amazing husband, Max. I also became involved in the independent living disability rights movement, which believed that if things were going to change for people with disabilities in this country, people with disabilities had to change it. And in aging, they're saying the same thing. It's up to the seniors to lead the way and change how we live. I'm a housing advocate. I have been most of my life, and I'm not getting any younger. So I have a vested interest in this subject. So what is universal design? That's what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, I spent most of my early career working on accessible design. You know, grab bars, wider doors, higher toilets, wider doorways, entrances you can get in and out, not only in housing, but in the whole community. And we got the ADA passed. We got the Fair Housing Act changed. So we did get a lot of changes made. But here's the problem, and I think you alluded to this. You said if you're going to have a conference or a center, don't call it aging. Well, people who are aging also age into disability. They age into disability. But if you say to somebody who had a stroke and can't walk anymore, how long have you been disabled? They're more likely to say to you, oh, I'm not disabled. I just had a stroke and I can't walk. Why? There's a stigma attached to that. So when you go back to talking about accessible design, if you talk about designing for accessibility, people think, oh, grab bars. I don't want those in my house. I don't need them. What if you fall and break a hip and your house has steps and your bedrooms are all on the second floor and so's the bathroom? Excuse me, let me use a stroke, because that's where I'm going with this. So you've had a stroke, your bedrooms and your bath are on the second floor, there's steps into your house and steps to your second floor. And you're 83 years old. And you don't want to go in a nursing home. My 87-year-old father, who was 84 when he had his stroke, came to live with me because my house was accessible. My house has a ramp and an elevator because my husband needed that. So my dad didn't have to go in an institution. He came to live with Max and me. Now, he didn't like it, but now he likes it. And now I'm creating a bedroom in the back of the house for him because he loves to paint. So he gets that bedroom. And he's real excited and he wants me to hurry up and get it done. But the other thing is, my dad, at 87, the reason I wasn't here on time and the reason I didn't make it to the dinner last night, I apologize, is because I have dinner with my dad several nights a week when he's at my house. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I drive my dad to a senior center because they offer workout programs for $1, and my dad's cheap. And he doesn't want to spend more than $1 to exercise. So he goes in there and he does exercises 3 days a week for half an hour, goes and has coffee with my brother. Then my brother drives him to work because the doctor took the keys away when he had the stroke. Thank God the doctor did it because we were trying to figure out how to do it. I mean, if your dad has a glass eye in one eye, and at 84, we say, Dad, driving at night, right? He goes, don't worry about it. You see that? Here's what I do. I just put my finger up when I see the oncoming lights, and I block the light out with my fingers. We're like, Dad, what? Well, fortunately, he had this stroke, and the doctor said, you can't drive. We're like, yes, we didn't have to do it. And then he got used to us, and I'm the oldest of 12, so there's a bunch of us that are all his drivers, and we're all helping. But my dad, after he has that coffee with my brother, he goes to work. Every day my dad goes to work. He's now 87. He recovered from the stroke. He goes to his office every day where he's a financial planner. He's been doing it for 50 years. If you need a good one, in this market, he saved me. He made some very good decisions, made good recommendations to me to get through this economic crisis. Every day he goes to work. It's part of his dignity. It's part of what defines him. And if I didn't drive him to work out this morning instead of coming here with you guys at 8:30, I'd have been in hot water. You don't change. He's got a routine. It works for him. Do it. So I apologize for being late. But my dad's at work. So why do I care about universal design? Well, it goes back to this stigma thing. The creator of universal design, Ron Mace, had dinner with my husband and I in the 80s. And he said, I want to tell you guys, we were in Washington, he said, I want to tell you about a new concept I'm working on. It's called universal design. And it's the design of products and spaces to be used by the greatest number of people with the least amount of adaptation or specialized design. We said, wait, Ron, why are you doing this? Now, Ron was the big leader in accessible design. After the ANSI standards, which I won't go into that, he worked on building codes. He created the first accessible building code for the state of North Carolina, which became a model building code for the rest of the country. And it's the grab bars and the ramps and the whole 9 yards. Ron grew up with polio. He walked when he was young, but later used a wheelchair because it was more convenient. But the world was not barrier-free. So he set out to change it. First by doing accessibility codes, but then recognizing that accessibility applies to one class, disabled folks. What about everybody else? What about little kids who can't reach things? What about seniors who get smaller as they get older? What about if, and he had some good vision, what about as people get older, they don't want to go in institutions. We learned that because of the disability rights movement. People with disabilities didn't want to go in or wanted to get out of institutions. So you kind of extrapolate out a little bit and say, well, seniors aren't really going to want to go there. And what do you know? The advocates of the 80s are the seniors of today. We don't want to go in institutions. We want to age in place. We want to have active lives. We want to do art, dance. I go dancing one night a week. Couples dancing, line dancing, and now swing dancing. They're making us do swing dancing. I'm not big into it. I like the country western dancing, but it doesn't matter. It's active. And everybody I go with is in their 70s. I'm the kid. But I know that I'm not getting any younger and have to make a plan. And I have this 87-year-old dad who's out doing things all the time, so I can't be a slacker. So Ron said, think about it. Accessibility, while it's perfect for what we need in disability, there's a stigma attached to disability and to accessible design. As soon as you put up a grab bar, people are like, I don't want to move in that apartment. That's for those people. Well, when you become one of those people, you change your tune, but not until you become disabled do you change your tune. So Ron said, let's come up with a design concept that enables us to design for everybody, but it also changes without the need for adaptation or specialized design. And what we didn't put in the definition was great expense. My dad, when he had that stroke at 84, didn't have the income to put an elevator or a chairlift in his house to get to that second floor. And the bathroom's too small anyway to go in and make all the changes and make it accessible. It made more sense to come live with us. And frankly, that's a pattern that's repeating itself. There are a lot of people my age that have family members who are living with them. But if their houses don't work, the family members can't come. There are so many people who break a hip, have a stroke, wind up in a nursing home, and they never get out. One of the reasons is they can't go home in the first place from the hospital because they can't get around. We got to do something about that. So that's why I said, I want to work on this. Now, in disability, 22% of our population has a disability. That was the last census number. And if you just do the math, you figure that more and more people are going to experience disability, whether they own up to it or not. As you age, you lose your vision, your hearing, your mobility. Those are disabilities. But nobody wants to say I'm disabled. They just say, nope, I can't see as well as I used to. Okay. And the boomers, I'm a boomer. We're just going to age differently. We're not having this institutional stuff. The aging in place trend and the stereotypical stuff I already talked about. The other thing is that universal design does not have to add significant cost, but can add significant value. Now, I have a lot of pictures that I'm going to show you in this as I chatter away here. But the importance is that you have usability in your design. It's flexible design. It can change if your needs change, and I'll explain that as we go along in here. And the other thing is, it's attractive. Universal design is attractive design. It doesn't stand out and say, oh, that's for all the people who can't walk and can't see. It says anybody can live here, and I'm going to show you how we did that. I'm going to do that by talking about 6 North. 6 North is a building that was built by McCormick Barron Salazar in St. Louis. It's in the Central West End. It's located ideally close to buses, close to groceries, not too far from the Metrolink train. There are curb cuts in the neighborhood. There are restaurants, shops, and stores. That's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it is get a cheap piece of ground out where there's nothing, but it's cheap land, and build a place for people with disabilities and seniors to live. You're isolating them. By design and by location, you isolate people. And if you want people to get up and move around, they have to be located in communities where they can get up and move around. So that's what we did at 6 North. And the other thing is, while there are some subsidized units in the building, but there's also a really great mix of people. This is a mixed income building. Some people pay $1,100 a month for a 2-bedroom, and some people pay 30% of their income. But the mixture is grand. There's students, there's retired people, there are professionals there. It's a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments of varying sizes, and it really works. Now, here's the entrance to 6 North. I maintain that that's a nice looking building. What doesn't show is the universal features what doesn't stand out are the universal features that are there. But here they are. A covered entry. You don't have a little narrow curb cut. You know how you see curb cuts and they're about 36 inches wide? This one is about 8 feet wide. Nobody says that a curb cut has to be 36 inches wide. That's a minimum. Excuse me, I don't know where to go here. That's a minimum. That's all the code makes you do. But codes are minimums. You can do more than what the code says. You don't have to do only a little bit. You can slope this walk instead of put in a ramp, but you have to think about it in the design phase. You have to think about it at the beginning of your project. Curbless parking. High contrast color is very important for people with low vision. It doesn't matter a whit to people who are blind because they don't see color. But people with low vision do a lot of defining, they do a lot of identifying what is going on in the space they're moving in by color. Color is very important. So if you use color contrast is a universal design feature. And you put it in there so people can make out the spaces. Texture change is also important. People who are blind, if I'm walking along here, my feet are going to pick up that there's an obstacle underneath my feet right now if I'm blind. So will the cane. A lot of people use canes and the dogs, but your feet, the bottom of your shoes gives you information, and it tells you something has changed. So as we go through here, I'll show you how texture change makes a big difference. Lighting is critical. It's critical for all of us, but it's critical for seniors. But it has to be non-glare lighting. These lights are shining in my eyes, and they're distorting my vision. I have to keep my view down here so I can see you all. Glaring lighting distorts the vision of seniors who have low vision. So you want to use non-glare lighting. Okay, now the rest of these are all labeled, all the little tags. We do like to marry universal design with green design. We think they're very good partners and they can live well together and not get divorced. So there was a change in the grade of the sidewalk here and how the building sat on the site. So the building is lower, so they took along the edge of this building, that part of the sidewalk's lower, it slopes up to meet this part of the public sidewalk, and in between they put bushes to catch the rain, and they slope the sidewalk so that the rain goes in and keeps those bushes watered. Stepless entries are a universal feature, and it's done here throughout this building on the first floor. All of the entries are stepless. To control the water, the sidewalk is sloping. Covered entries, again, the universal features are repeated throughout this building. Color contrast, you can see that the doors are yellow, they're framed in black, so the door stands out. Product design, I mentioned that it's in environments and products. This table is in the community space, and if the table is too high, this little crank handle pulls out from underneath the table and you can crank it down or crank it up. But if you don't need it, it just stores right underneath the table and nobody's the wiser. But it's adaptable, it's flexible. Clear stories are not only pretty, they let in a lot of natural light. So we've got a couple of clear stories in this building. Okay, here's an elevator lobby. And what you see is on the bottom of the screen, you've got carpet, like these carpet squares here on the floor. But when you come to the lobby, you change to tile. As you're walking, there's not only a color change here, there's also a texture change, and people who are blind feel that underneath their feet. There's all kinds of color contrast and lighting issues that are going on in this lobby. But if I didn't tell you that there was information here, you would just walk through here and say, this is a pretty building. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. The other thing that I don't know if those of you up front can see, but a package shelf is a universal feature. So when you come up to your door and you have a purse or you have things in your arm, you can set them down while you're fishing around to find your keys and get in. Otherwise, how many times have you walked up to a door, put all your stuff down on the floor and fished around, then you open the door and you go in. My house has a lever handle too, so I can elbow. I don't have to turn the handle. Lever handles, you just give them an elbow and a shove, and open goes the door. Again, you can see how color contrast is used throughout in the apartments. They used a kind of a coppery cinnamon color on the wall, but they framed it with black. Black is used in the trim throughout this building. And it's a very defining color because there's so much contrast between anything else and black. The floors are a light color in the kitchen and living space. The bedrooms change to carpet, so you have a texture change, but it's all smooth transitions. There's no steps here. There's no barriers here. And again, they coupled the color contrast with big, huge windows that let in a lot of natural light. Makes the space a very pretty space. Most people who walk in there say, wow, this is so great. Oh, I got to show you the thing that really sells the apartment, though. Let me see where it is. I think it's coming. Okay, here's the kitchen. Is that a pretty kitchen? Very appealing. People go in there and they love it. And that's the first thing you come into when you come into these apartments. Now, let me pick it apart a little bit. Show you what's going. Oh, my daughter did that. She's always having fun with me. You see this? Can you see this lever here? Okay, this is an adjustable work or eating space. So since it's a small apartment, if you want to eat there and not put a table in there and take up your floor space, you just crank that handle and bring it down and eat. But if you're having a party and you want to have it as a little bar, raise it up, which is how it was in the first picture, raise it up higher and put your hors d'oeuvres and your wine and set it up on there. It's really kind of fun. But it also can be level with the workspace so that it increases your workspace, which everybody needs in the kitchen. And you see the color contrast is a repeating theme throughout here. Okay, so now we're going to break it down again. This dishwasher is not located on the floor. It's a raised dishwasher. It's mounted higher in the cabinet. It's probably about 12 inches off the floor. Is that for people in wheelchairs? No. That's for people like me who got thrown from my horse and I've got a fracture in my back, and bending over gets tiring. So that's great for all of you guys too. And people who are seated can also use it. So it's flexible. They thought about how to design the space and how can it be designed for all users. Kids can load and unload this dishwasher, as can anybody, seated or standing. Let's say you break your foot and standing for long times is a problem. You can open the doors and shove them in it's called retractable doors. They can go into the cabinet, and then you can take that toe kick out and put it in the closet and sit there at a chair and work at that sink. Flexible. If you don't need that, put the toe kick back in and shut the doors and put all your cleaning stuff underneath there. Flexible. Use it the way the user needs to. But the manager doesn't have to come in and spend a lot of money to make that sink accessible to somebody who sits, whether it's in a wheelchair or you broke your foot or sprained your foot. Now this is a kind of a side view. There's an in-wall oven. Side-by-side refrigerators are a universal feature because they open out so wide, which increases your reach inside there. You can sit sideways and reach deep to the back of the freezer. And these happen to have the pull-out drawers in the freezer compartment, so you can reach everything that's in there. And we've got a pantry in. The toe kicks are raised. Why is that? Well, when you're sitting in a wheelchair, where you need your biggest circle of space is down where your feet are, because your feet stick out like this. If you have a raised toe kick, you can tuck yourself just a little bit more underneath that countertop, which increases your side reach. It's a little thing, but it's a big thing. And if you don't need it, it still looks nice. Here's another example, just all the features are repeated. What we did in the bedrooms is we put in movable walls to cover the closets, and it also comes over when the closet's open, it closes off from the bedroom into the bathroom. But you don't have a hinge door that invades your space because you need space to move around in your bedroom. So you can get movable walls, which are really bypass doors, but we call them movable walls. This is an example of, instead of putting this is not in 6 North, it's another building, but I threw it in here to show you that if you can get natural light and you can put in 2 doors, instead of having the door on the left be a fixed door, it can be an operable door, and then you can open up and you have a wider door to put things in and out from your patio. Doesn't have to be a fixed door. And put a lever handle on, that's a universal feature. I showed this because there are adjustable closet shelves. That's a universal feature. You can put them wherever you want, and it doesn't cost any money. If you plan for that in the first place, you can just move them up and down for whoever is there. Oh, here we go again. My daughter. Mom, it's too boring. You need something. No, Emily, don't do that. Okay, so now, what makes the bathroom universal? Right now, it's just a bathroom, right? This shower mixing valve is offset. It's a little closer to the edge of the shower so that if you're seated or standing, you don't have to lean over to reach in to the middle of the tub. You can just reach the edge, turn on the water, and have it already running before you get in there. This happens to be a shower. So it's a curbless shower. We don't call it a roll-in shower. A roll-in shower is in an accessible apartment. A curbless shower is in a universal apartment. Are they the same? Yes. Okay, there's a couple big deals in here. One is that a lot of people think in an accessible space, you need to have a 5-foot turning space on the bathroom floor so somebody in a wheelchair can turn around. That's true. But a lot of people won't put storage in the bathroom because the cabinet has to sit on the floor. No, it doesn't. Screw it into the wall 12 inches off the floor. Again, because of those footrests that turn, your turning space needs to be within 12 inches off the floor. There's a 5-foot turning space in this bathroom. There's room to come up along the side of that toilet and do a side transfer if you want to. There's also big sheets of plywood behind the drywall. So if you need grab bars, you can screw them in anywhere you want to. They don't have to be 36 inches off the floor like the accessibility codes call for. They can be wherever you need them. Now, this is what happens when you change a universal tub to an accessible tub. Since there's blocking in the walls, you can put the grab bars up. You have a handheld shower in the first place, that's a universal feature. So if you can't reach it, you always leave it down. You mix your water before you get in, and it's already on when you get in the tub. You can screw in a bath bench because there's blocking in the walls on the other side. In other words, you plan to make it adaptable. Then it can turn into accessible, and if you don't need it accessible, for the next person who moves in, just unscrew it, putty up the nail holes, stick some paint on it, and you're done. Otherwise, to make this accessible, you've got to pull out the drywall, pull out the tile, put in reinforcements so you can put your grab bars in and then put it all back up. Totally, much more expense, much more trouble. Older people don't want a lot of trouble. They don't want to go to the trouble and the expense. This is just an example of having breaker boxes that are lower so you can reach them. So that's in a reach range for people who are standing or seated. A lot of times you see breaker boxes way up high. You don't have to have them way up high. It's just a means of doing things. And then there's a thermostat. I don't know if I have a picture of the thermostat. Front-mounted controls are a universal feature. This is particularly good in the stove so that you're not reaching over hot things, especially if you're sitting. You're more likely to burn yourself either with a hot pot or the steam. So put the controls in the front. Same thing with the washer and dryer. Front loading, it's easier to get things in and out of there. I just bought some and I love them. They're mounted up on a tall stand, so I don't have to bend over with this fracture I have in my back. There's the thermostat. You can buy all kinds of thermostats. The issue is the color contrast here. Can you see the numbers better? Are they larger? Is there contrast so you can see them? These are not hard to find. They're becoming more and more popular. And the other thing is that in the public spaces, you do need accessibility. This is an accessible parking space with a loading zone so you can get out of the car. You need that because that's in the common areas. So you do have some features of accessibility that code-wise go along with universal design. That's just, this is the back of the building. The back of the building is as pretty as the front of this building, and I don't have a good slide to show you all of it, but it has a big, long covered entry. You can see on the bottom, can you see that stripe in that walkway there? That lets you know that that's the sidewalk. So people with low vision get used to that and becomes a marker. Oh, here's the sidewalk, and it leads to the entrance, the covered entrance. And we have a conference, May 6th through 9th, a little shameless self-promotion. It's a national training conference at St. Louis U, May 6th through 9th, 13, wrong number. It's not this year, it's next year.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and pick up with our next presenter. And again, all the bios are in the program, so you can read in more detail who our speakers are. But obviously, what would an event be titled The Age of Aging, The Art of Aging, without having an art therapist as a presenter? Laura Schmid is an art therapist at Park Provence, and we'll be talking about artistic activities and their therapeutic benefits for older adults. Please join me in welcoming Laura Schmid.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. We're just looking out here. It's so nice to see so many people that have an interest in aging and the arts, being an art therapist and having an interest in the arts myself. It's great to see this. As you know, my name is Laura Schmid, and I am a registered art therapist and also a licensed professional counselor here in St. Louis. I went to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and I graduated in 2007 with a master's in art therapy counseling. After that, I began working at Park Provence as an art therapist, and For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Parc Provence, it's an assisted and skilled living community specializing in memory care. And I have been there for going on 4.5 years now, and built and created the program and seen it grown in many, many ways, as I've seen the older adults that I work with grow and change as well. And I've learned a lot, and so I'm here to share some of that with you today. Some of what I've discovered during my experience engaging older adults in the arts. So I think I'm going to ask how many people in here are familiar with art therapy, how many people have heard of it, know what it is? Oh, wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that many. A lot of times I am introduced to people who have never even heard of art therapy, so this is really great. Well, I'm going to touch on some of the therapeutic benefits that I've seen creative expression offer the residents that I work with. And I'm going to kind of go over a little bit about what art therapy really is, so you kind of get a sense of where I'm coming from with my work with my residents, and why I might provide a certain material for them or a certain project for them to work on. And then I'm also going to give you guys some tips to take home today, too, on ways that you can better engage older adults in the arts, too, even if you're not an art therapist. So hopefully everybody will walk away today with something to use or to share with others. So let's get started. I forgot to show this. This is a work by one of the ladies that I work with. Okay, so starting, what is art therapy? If you take the principles of art and the principles of psychotherapy and you put them together, you get art therapy. And art therapy is based on the belief that the creative process that we're engaged in is life-enhancing and healing at the same time. And so art therapy is much the same as many other therapeutic modalities, which would be to increase or maintain our well-being. So whether you're seeing like an occupational therapist or a physical therapist or a counselor, the purpose of that is usually to maintain your well-being. And art therapy is just the same. We achieve this in a little bit of a different sense, and that's through the creative process and the communication of nonverbal symbols and also metaphors. And I find that this is especially useful to those who may have a difficult time expressing their thoughts and feelings verbally. Maybe they're uncomfortable with the whole process. A lot of us can be at times. Or they might be experiencing some sort of physical or cognitive changes that may hinder them from doing so, such as the case might be with memory loss and dementia. Okay, art therapists believe that the creative process reflects our feelings, ideas, so what comes alive during art making time is a reflection and a mirror of that. And so what might that look like? I have an example to show you, a series of 3 photographs here. These are, all 3 of these next slides are going to be pieces created by the same lady. She painted this. It's called Orange Captured Butterflies, and at the time when she created this, she was going through some physical changes. She had went from being ambulatory to being placed in a wheelchair, and that transition was very difficult for her. And this came alive through her artwork. I had not asked her to paint a butterfly. This is just kind of what came about. And the title itself, Orange Captured Butterflies, I kind of wonder here if this might be indicative of what her current feelings were at the time and her state. And so I didn't want to just kind of put this aside. I wanted to really talk about this with her and process this with her, because this is something that she's going through. And so since she used the metaphor of the butterfly, I followed up on this with her the next time I saw her, and I stuck with things that fly, since that was her metaphor. So I provided her with butterflies and birds, things that had wings, just to see what would happen. And so she arranged them, and she has, let me see if I can use this clicker here. I won't work. Okay. Well, she has the butterflies and the dragonflies flying, and she said that they feel trapped and that they really want to feel heard and understood. And so, again, I wonder if this might be a metaphor for her own desire and need for that as well, and that's being expressed through her artwork. And then she has the bluebirds on top, and she has them wanting to fly free, and she said that that feels really, really good. So what I take from this is that she's able to kind of explore her own independence during her art session, and also express her need of wanting to be heard. And when she's listened to during the art session, that feels really good for her. So we followed through with this one more time. This time I just gave her the bluebirds, and she places them flying free in the warm sunshine. And so she may relate to these birds in some way. In some way, the birds may be her. As they extend their freedom and fly away in the warm sunshine, she's also kind of able to do the same thing during her art sessions and exercise her own freedom and independence, as well as stating some of those changes that she's going through, and really being heard and understood as well. And if I can just talk on age-related changes for a moment, I feel like it would be kind of neglectful not to address these, since this is the reality of our older adults. Adjust this here. So hopefully by addressing these during the creative process, we can maintain hope in our older adults, might even rekindle some sort of new energy, so that this can be a time in their lives when they can continue to grow and thrive. So that's a little bit about art therapy. So then what would be the difference between like art therapy and arts and crafts? I see art therapy as a really focused on our inner experiences again, our feelings, our thoughts, our ideas, whereas arts and crafts may or may not have that general focus. They may focus on learning a skill or a technique. And then again, art therapy has goals in mind really geared towards an individual's needs that are focused on their therapeutic needs. Whereas arts and crafts may or may not, again, provide this for our older adults. It may just be for the purpose to decorate or to put together a project, but it may not have that meaning behind it that a project in creative expression or arts therapy may provide. So I'm going to show you a little clip of some photos here of some paintings and artwork that's been done, of what art can bring to the surface when it is more therapeutic or expressive and meaningful. I'm going to speak a few words while I show these pictures, and the words that I'm speaking are going to be the actual descriptions of these pieces or the title that the creator had given them. Words are not necessary when memories, thoughts, and feelings come alive on paper. I notice the changes going on inside me. Some days I feel mixed up, like a sleepy rose, or lonely looking for a friend. But art has given me the opportunity to feel my inner beast, strong as a lion, strong as a redwood tree. Painting brings me peace and a sense of safety, like my guardian angel is watching over me. While creating, I think of my past and things I have done. I think of the beauty I have seen, and I feel calm. I think of my home, and I remember having fun. I enjoy all of God's beautiful colors. Art sets me free, free as the breeze. So what I want to share with you next are the therapeutic benefits that this type of creative expression can offer older adults. And I'm going to focus on 8, though of course this is not limited to 8. These are the 8 that I notice most often in my work. So one being that art can enhance socialization and meaningful interactions, whether that's between you and a family member, a group, one-on-one, a caretaker, and an older adult, any kind of interaction, it really enhances that when you're working with them. And some indicators of this could be, you might notice increased eye contact. They're orientating more to you. They might start smiling or laughing. And you might notice some positive changes in behavior. Now, group work is really great as well, because it can provide a context for that social skills and support, peer support, and a sense of belonging and identity as well in a group. And I have a picture here to show you. So here's a picture of an intergenerational group project that we had done this past summer, where a group of children came in from a residential school in St. Louis. They came with their art therapists, and we collaborated on a project together. The children came in and they were paired up with an older adult. This particular day we had an odd number, so this lucky girl got 2. They had a little bit of extra time left at the end of the day when they were finished, before the children had to go back to school. So we invited the kids to make a gift for their new pal before they had to leave, using the art materials that we had out and had provided for them. And this little girl got really, really into this. She was hiding off in the corner working on this project. It was a big secret till she could kind of expose it and give this gift to her new friends. She had created headdresses, and she found scraps of fabric, and they were hula skirts. She dressed her ladies all up, and they got up and they started dancing and singing. And I just think this is such a wonderful example of the meaningful connection that can be made through the arts, especially through intergenerational work. You can see the lady on the left actually has her arm around and on this little girl's shoulder. So they're really connecting, and they're all smiling and laughing. Another therapeutic benefit is that art can provide for tactile and sensory stimulation, and this can also allow us a time to kind of exercise those fine and gross motor skills through the manipulation of our art materials. So one thing I really love for this is clay. You can pound clay, you can smash it, you can roll it, you can engage all those gross motor skills. It's also really great to exercise the muscles in our fingers and our hands. And then you can throw in, you can have them carve or write in the clay. You can have them stick objects in to engage more of those fine gross motor skills. Of course, this isn't limited to clay. There's all kinds of options out there for the tactile and sensory stimulation. Pretty much anything will work. We've used shaving cream before, had them sculpt and play with shaving cream. I've even used paint brushes to paint icing on cookies, and then we have fun eating them afterwards. So of course it's not limited. There's many materials you can use. Another therapeutic benefit is that art also provides us an opportunity to stimulate that cognitive functioning. So whether that's providing a theme to initiate thoughts and feelings to fit that theme, or finding appropriate images, using multi-step projects are all great. Things such as categorizing and sorting, or writing about your artwork as well, or a piece that you find in a magazine. You can write about a photo, some creative writing, or drawing or painting from a picture is also wonderful as well. You really focus on the shapes of the objects and the placements of the objects. It's a great visuospatial exercise. Another benefit is that art can provide opportunities for us to feel really great about ourselves, to increase our self-confidence, our self-esteem, thereby decreasing depression that older adults might be going through. Just by having a time where the focus is really on their cognitive strengths and putting aside any of those physical or cognitive losses that they may be experiencing. And this may happen by just being able to use a material or product that they feel really successful with, seeing an accomplishment unfold before them as they're working, or learning a new task despite their deficits. Or it may be directed through specific themes or topics to kind of initiate feelings, positive feelings, such as thinking about times when we felt really strong, or thinking about something that makes us really happy or proud. I'm going to go back to this one. This is a painting of a lady. She painted herself holding her baby in her lap. And so she's recalling that time of being a mother and caretaking and providing for her daughter, and that was a time where she felt really strong in her life. And and she was happy to share that with the group. Another example, this one's called Happy Fingers. This is actually supposed to be a painting of a piano outside in a garden. And the lady who created this is a pianist, a composer, and she's very, very proud of her music, and she loves to share that with others. And I would think that this would indicate that she's really happy when she's playing her piano and creating her music. Another therapeutic benefit is that art can be used for memory recall, either through reminiscence and life review, or again, using those specific themes or topics to kind of initiate thoughts and feelings on a certain theme. So that might be remembering or recalling our home, where we grew up, where we came from. That can also provide a sense of identity as well for our older adults. Or doing some sort of life review. There's all different forms of life review, writing, making a book, using photographs, scrapbooking, interviewing, all different forms. This is an example of writing exercises where they're able to kind of write about a memory and create an image about it as well. Another therapeutic benefit is that creative expression can bring forth positive changes in affect. These might be things that you notice changing within 5 minutes of their work, or maybe something more subtle that you notice over a week or a month's time. I have an example here. The gentleman who created this piece, he came to group not really feeling like he was in the right place, kind of questioning, why am I here? I'm not an artist, sort of thing. Well, he was encouraged to stay, and that his presence was important to the group, and that the time wasn't about being an artist, but rather that a time for him to explore and share his journey, and that he just be willing to try. And he did try, and he ended up creating this, and he ended up being a wonderful, wonderful asset to the group, sharing lots of memories, engaging with the other residents, and then at the end, he put on the top Artist Joe. So at the beginning, he came into the group not really feeling like he was in the right place or that he really belonged, but he left really having a sense of identity and even identifying himself as an artist, which was just amazing. So again, some of these changes you may notice that happen over just one time working, like the past example, or you may notice them over time. You may notice more spontaneity. They may start feeling more free to use more than one color, or filling up the whole page or a whole canvas that's provided for them, or feeling more confident about their work, engaging more with others, and being proud to share that with the group as well. The artistic environment can also foster a safe place for the expression of feelings. And sometimes it feels more safe to express our feelings using nonverbal language, such as those of loss. I mean, our older adults, they face a lot of loss of loved ones, loss of their independence, loss of their home. The lady who created this piece, the circle is an image of heaven and where she believes her husband is at. And so we really talked about that, and she shared and she wrote about her husband. And during that visit, she was saying that she's really excited someday to see her husband once again, but she's not ready quite yet. So, as well as exploring some of those life changes that our older adults are going through as well, and providing a place for them to say it's okay, to talk about this, it's okay to discuss this. But this is kind of heavy stuff, and the art doesn't always necessarily have to go that route. It can just sometimes just be for fun and play, a time of enjoyment to play, to experience, and to explore. Here's an example. This is called squashing the paint, and I learned this that day. I had no idea what squashing the paint was. This is actually a technique that one of my ladies, this is something she used to do when she was a child with her best friend. They would squash the paint. They'd put paint on a brush and squash the bristles flat on the paper and just keep dabbing. So for a whole visit, we squashed the paint. Or it may actually mean playing This lady grew up next door to a firehouse, and she has very fond memories. She loves talking about it. So we created a model of the firehouse. We built a model of her home. We make all kinds of props, and we actually play with them using puppets, and we have lots of fun reenacting those memories for her and letting her recall that time in her life that brings back a very positive feelings. Okay, so I want to share some ways that anybody can incorporate more meaning or creative expression in their artwork. Obviously, not everybody is an art therapist, but there is some things that everybody can kind of do to incorporate some of this in their work. And I feel like one of the main things is shifting our focus. Shifting the focus from product-based to process-based, I think, is a big thing, especially if our older adults are feeling not very confident in the arts. Focusing more on the process and what that experience is like for them may enable them to kind of feel more free to explore with the materials and create. So some ways to do this. I'm not a big, huge fan of pre-made craft kits, though I feel like there's a time and a place for them. Sometimes I'm not a huge fan of them when we're trying to do expressive creativity. They often come with, in a kit, a certain number of pieces and instructions on ways to put them together. And I feel like that really hinders creativity. So instead, I like to focus, instead of teaching and telling, I like to focus on ways for them to explore for themselves and use it in a way that's comfortable for them. And this can enable them to feel free to explore and not hindered like there's a certain way they have to do something, especially if they're experiencing some sort of physical or cognitive deficit and they're unable to put the kit together and really create it from however the sample looks. That may kind of be frustrating for them. Okay, so I also want to talk about ways to get participation in the arts. Sometimes this can be a big obstacle, especially if we have some older adults that may be confused or unmotivated. Most of the time, if you walk up to somebody and ask them, do you want to paint? Or, hey, it's time to paint, it's time to go to art class, they're going to be like, what? I'm not an artist, I'm not a painter, no, I don't want to go. So I think that the approach can make all the difference on this. Instead of inviting them to come and do painting, I invite them to come and help me with a project or spend time with me. And I always reiterate each visit that it's not about being an artist just because they see art materials there. It's just important that they're there, willing to try, explore, and share, and that they can use the art materials to do that, to share with the other members in the group. Maybe learn something about themselves along the way or use them for brain exercises too. And I've had success with these approaches. I've been able to get more of my residents involved in the arts. Okay, so we have them, we got them to come to the arts. Now we might face another obstacle once they're there, is getting them started if it's something that they're not used to or that they're uncomfortable with. A blank sheet of paper can be very intimidating, a blank canvas, or seeing a bunch of material set out before you that you've never used before. That can be intimidating right there. Where do I start? So you may want to just offer them a time to kind of explore with the materials, get comfortable with them on how, like a way that is comfortable for them before offering them a time to work on a project. And then if they're feeling stuck, you can make suggestions as well. What color do you feel like today? Start with suggest some form or shape and it might turn into something, or also having some inspiration in the group available too, such as art books or magazines they may be able to flip through and that may give them idea for something. And teaching compensatory techniques is important as well. If some of our older adults may have some sort of physical dexterity deficit, or if they have vision troubles, you can provide bright contrasting colors, use of more tactile and sensory materials. There's little tricks of the trade you can use sticking a ball of yarn on the end of a paintbrush or a pencil, if their grip is, they don't have a tight grip, that gives them something to hold in the ball of their hand so that they're still able to use a paintbrush or a pencil or a marker. So we're also there during the art making to provide and support them physically during their work, whether that's as a pair of surrogate hands or maybe guiding them or redirecting them if they seem to lose focus. And so then when the art making is done, you can offer time for a sharing experience to further process their work. This is a time when you can draw connections between group members as well. And again, during this, it's again about shifting the focus. When you're doing the sharing experience, shifting the focus back to their process and what the experience was like for them, so that you can make it a great experience for them each time. I think I have just a few minutes left here, so I have some websites. If you're interested in learning more about art therapy, you can check out the American Art Therapy Association. Missouri, here we have an Art Therapy Association here as well. We always have all kinds of events and workshops that you can go to, learn more, meet an art therapist if you're interested. Elizabeth Cockey and Dr. Linda Levi Midori are both art therapists who work with older adults. They have wonderful books out, and they also have a lot of resources on their websites as well. Some books. These 3 books are really great, and they're more geared toward activity professionals. And so they have all kinds of ideas and projects inside them. You can take them directly from the book and use them as is, or you can just kind of look through it for ideas and modify for your own art making. And then some books on art therapy. The top 2 are specifically art therapy in older adults. And they have ideas in them too, and they talk more about some of the therapeutic benefits of the art therapy with older adults. And then the bottom 2 are just general books on art therapy. And so I think what I'm going to leave you with today, I'm going to show you another quick little clip of slides of some photographs. And while I'm showing them, I'm going to speak again, and I'm going to speak in the voice of an older adult about what I feel that they have gotten out of experiencing the creative arts. I create my experience by crayon, by brush, by hand. Gracefully, my brush dances on the paper to tell a story of my journey. I write words. I study my work, contemplate, even joke, laugh, sing, and smile. Sometimes with assistance, with others, or all on my own. I can see my creation before me and how much I've grown. I can still do it. I am still here. I explore. I play. I reflect with others, silently to myself, and with you. I create an image telling of life, of my journey, of myself. A warmth inside me radiates with a memory and a smile. That's all. Thank you. We do. Okay.